Tutankhamun's death and burial. Mysterious reasons. Widely different answers have been given to the questions of when, where, and under what circumstances Tutankhamun died. That the king lived to experience the grape harvest of the 9th year after his accession is demonstrated by 6 dockets of year 9 on the amphoras filed with wine stored in the annex of his tomb. When Yaroslav Chany published the hieratic inscriptions from KV 62, he believed that the single docket of year 10 was in all probability also Tutankhamun's, but other specialists were hesitant to accept a decade-long reign for the king. Then, in 1996, Pierre Tourlet argued convincingly that the date referred to wine of Akhenaton's 10th year. Noting that wines in ancient times might not have been as perishable as we tend to believe, he proposed that the wine of Akhenaton's year 10 was included with the burial because of the prestige value of the year's vintage, like the wine in another amphora from the annex labeled year 31, which must refer to the reign of Amenhotep III. Thanks to the bouquets, garlands, wreaths, and floral collars found in the tomb and in the cache of materials associated with the burial of the king excavated from KV 54, the time of year when Tutankhamun died can be estimated. Assuming that the blossoms and fruit were freshly picked for the purpose and that the time from the king's death until he was buried amounted to the textually well-documented ideal of 70 days, then he died in January or early February. And then there is the amount of resins and oils poured over the mummy, regularly described as excessive, to be accounted for. But no hard and fast standards for royal mummies are discernible before Dynasty 6, and the remains found in KV 55, the closest mummy, in time to Tutankhamun's, are equally problematic of interpretation. One arm lies across the body with the other extended down, alongside the trunk, which contributed to its initial identification cation as female. While its skeletonized state can be attributed at least in part to an inadequate amount of just those oils and resins that were used in excess on Tutankhamun's corpse. Clues are also lacking about the whereabouts of the king when death struck. He may have been in a palace at Memphis or carrying out a religious obligation at the site of a major temple in Upper Egypt, underway on a tour of inspection or participating in a hunting expedition. And if he led the Egyptian army into battle, he may even have died abroad. But as Darnell and Manasseh conclude, we may never know whether Tutankhamun actually rode his chariot into battle. The causes of Tutankhamun's death. Theories about what led to Tutankhamun's death are legion, with no end to speculation in sight. Some of the suggestions are grounded on scientific analyses of his mummy. Others, like those attempting to identify what might have ailed Akhenaton, are inspired by the representations of the king in relief and painting, which have been incorrectly interpreted as showing him to be frail or even crippled. Regardless, the results are inconclusive. About the only definitive statement that can be made is that the mummy provides no evidence for supposing that he was murdered by a blow to the head. But the alternative cause, or rather the combination of causes that proposes, is by no means untested. Theories about what led to Tutankhamun's death are legion, with no end to speculation in sight. Some of the suggestions are grounded on scientific analyses of his mummy. Others are inspired by the representations of the king in relief and painting, which have been incorrectly interpreted as showing him to be frail or even crippled. Regardless, the results are inconclusive. About the only definitive statement that can be made is that the mummy provides no evidence for supposing that he was murdered by a blow to the head. But the alternative cause, or rather the combination of causes the study of Hawass and others proposes, is by no means uncontested. Uncontested. F. J. Rulli, head of the Center for Evolutionary Medicine at the University of Zurich, and Salima Ikram, an Egyptologist at the American University in Cairo specializing in the study of ancient Egyptian human as well as animal mummies, have co-authored a critical review of the many theories, published through March 2013, about why Tutankhamun died when he did. Since the initial autopsy of the king's body at the time KV 62 was cleared, it has been examined in detail 4 times. On the last occasion, Zahi Hawass oversaw the removal of the mummy from the tomb, by contrast to the 3 previous examinations which took place inside it, where the mummy had reposed within the outmost coffin and in the basin of the quartzite sarcophagus. Following on the extraction of DNA and quartz scans, the pitiable remains of the king were returned to KV-62 and placed in the controlled environment of a lighted glass case at the south end of the antechamber. One goal of the review that Raleigh and Ikram achieved with spectacular success is highlighting the complexities of paleopathology, how a single individual studied in detail by so many groups can yield so many and sometimes contradictory results. The only issue on which experts can be said to agree is the king's age at death. He was between 17 and 19 years old when he breathed his last. Hawassis team could rule out some of the multitude of pathological conditions, traumas, and physical defects from which Tutankhamun purportedly suffered, while simultaneously identifying new afflictions, such as Kohler's disease 2 and a clubfoot. The team's own conclusion, that the most likely cause of Tutankhamun's death was a vascular bone necrosis in conjunction with a malarial infection, has not met with an enthusiastic reception in the scientific community, let alone among Egyptologists. For example, even if it be conclusively demonstrated to everyone's satisfaction that Tutankhamun did have malaria, there is no way of determining whether he succumbed to it or recovered instead. A persistent shortcoming of many scientific/medical studies, which is not discussed by Raleigh and Ikram, is the failure of their authors to consult experienced, well-informed Egyptologists. Citations in error and / or incomplete references for books by Egyptologists and articles in non-scientific publications are many, while some pertinent titles are simply missing. For example, to bolster the theory that Tutankhamun experienced difficulty walking, the reference is Reeves's Complete Tutankhamun, without any page number cited. Furthermore, the reader will find no support for the idea that Tutankhamun needed a cane or crutches in the overview of the sticks and staves found in the tomb that Reeves provides. On the other hand, Hawassis and others do not include a reference to Ali Hassan's monograph on such standard items of Egyptian funerary equipment that do not provide any clue about the physical health of the owners. On the minus, however, even with the best medical and Egyptological forensic work, it is doubtful that all aspects of Tutankhamun's health and possible causes for his death will ever be known due to the absence of the indispensable direct, medical practitioner-patient interaction, and the limited amount of body tissue. In other words, only the court physician might possibly have been in a position to tell us why Tutankhamun died.